would be very sensitive about any mention of Trump's name in subsequent files. Most of what she handed out was already in the public record. They are not directly addressing the most significant part of this, which is the reporting that Trump was told he was mentioned multiple times in these files.
Okay guys, we discussed it in the earlier video about the Obama conspiracies floating around MAGA circles, but a bombshell new report has been released by the Wall Street Journal that I wanted to give a whole segment to, as it confirms what we all already knew, that Trump is littered throughout the Epstein files and was told as much behind closed doors months ago, speaking to why he probably changed his attitude on it. So leave us a like on the video, it lets us know you enjoy this kind of content and it gets us out there in the algorithm, and let's just hop right into the reporting.
The Wall Street Journal is now reporting that Justice Department officials told President Trump in May that his name was among many names mentioned in the Epstein files. This is something the White House is now labeling as, quote, fake news, end quote.
Now, of course it won't be, but this should be symmetry breaking for MAGA's worldview. We now have conclusive proof that Trump first pushed this thing to the public when he believed it could be used against Democrats, then privately behind closed doors found out it would incriminate him, didn't go public about any of that, but instead slowly turned his tune into that of this being fake news, something the Democrats made up against him, that the media is lying about, showing very clearly that this is just what he does when he's caught and refuses to take accountability. Anyone who can't accept that is just too far in the cold. It conclusively invalidates every other but Democrats' claim that he's ever made about his fraud, his sexual assault, his 34 felonies, his 54 other indictments, the 2020 election, literally all of it. Any claim he's made about the media, all of it's out the window. We all already knew that, but this is what it should do for MAGA. Of course, they're probably going to put a bunch of copium in its place instead and be like, oh, but this. More importantly, MAGA can no longer pass moral judgments on the left that will be taken seriously. They platformed a PDF file rapist to the highest position of power, following and supporting him unconditionally for the last 10 years, now allowing him to cover up this to the best of his ability. Literally, guys, go sit at the kids' table. We don't care anymore.
We have received some statements from the Justice Department saying, quote, the DOJ and the FBI reviewed the Epstein files and reached the conclusion set out in the July 6th memo. Nothing in the files warranted further investigation or prosecution. We have filed a motion in court to unseal the underlying grand jury transcripts. We'll get to that in a second. As part of our routine briefing, we made the president aware of the findings. So in that statement from the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, they are not directly addressing the most significant part of this, which is the reporting that Trump was told he was mentioned multiple times in these files. Now, there's also a statement from the FBI Director Kash Patel. It says the memo released on July 6th is consistent with a thorough review conducted by the FBI and DOJ. The criminal leakers and fake news media tries tirelessly to undermine President Trump with smears, lies, and this story is no different. I'm reading that because it suggested to me that the FBI director there is calling the story a lie.
And that's why the timeline is super important to focus on here. For years, these clowns, all of them littered throughout Trump's administration, Trump himself, MAGA voters, boasted this list as proof of the deep state, whatever they think that is, and talked about how Democrats would be littered throughout it. Trump promised to release it, no questions asked, and how, again, multiple Democrats would be on it. Then 2 months ago, he finds out behind closed doors that the very files he would be releasing would be incriminating him and him mainly. And now all of a sudden, the same people who promised to release this because they care so much about the American people are saying the fake news made it all up. Now, as to like a specific list of names existing as to like who did what, I doubt that exists. I've always doubted like the veracity, right, of a list of like Dr. Doofenshmirtz type, you know, where it just proves everything. But the totality of the evidence that I think could be assembled in the files would probably conclusively point you towards who the main culprits were. And that's clearly what terrifies Trump.
If we go back to the first Bondi-related Epstein controversy, you may remember she held an event to great fanfare at the White House where she handed out binders of what was promised to be new information related to the Epstein investigations. And a lot of MAGA-aligned influencers were very disappointed because most of what she handed out was already in the public record. But sources at that time told me a lot of the frustration from the White House with Bondi in that event was the fact that they didn't redact Trump's name, even though these were records that were already well known. They were flight logs. There was a lot of frustration around Bondi's handling of that incident. So it tracks with what the Wall Street Journal is reporting here, that they would be very sensitive about any mention of Trump's name in subsequent files.
And there you have it from them themselves. If they release anything going forward, they're going to make sure to keep Trump's name out of it because he's upset when his name ends up in it and he gets exposed as the PDF file he really is, which is why it's taken them so long to release these things. Bondi has a history of covering up this type of stuff on Epstein. Look into her dealings in Florida. And with the rest of MAGA falling in line, I think I know why. To them, they largely bought into the propaganda, right? Like to hear elite PDF file ring, they're so convinced because of the propaganda they're fed about the elites, the deep state, that it has to be the Democrats, right? Slowly but surely, as these people, get power in the government, get ascend to different positions, essentially becoming the deep state, they have access to these files now, which have only been unsealed for this year, by the way. They realize now, oh my God, not only is it Trump on this, but it's a ton of Republicans on this, and there's not really any Democrats. Like, it's just Bill Clinton, like our party would be destroyed if we released this. And then in there, they all realized that they too value party over country and fell in line with Trump.